Hello and welcome to a new chapter of Indie Talks for Doble Firma. This is Alfonso Escámez, and for this new chapter of Indie Talks, we present Manuel Emch, CEO of Erard, an independent watch-making brand born in 1929 in the midst of the world crisis, and today is carrying out a great work of innovation and collaborating with other brands. Welcome, Manuel. Great pleasure to have you here with us.
Hello, Alfonso. Very happy to join this podcast with you.
Okay, let's go with the first question. For those that may not know you, just introduce yourself. Who is Manuel Emch, and what is your experience in the watchmaking sector?
Well, hello, my name is Manuel Emch. I've been in this watch industry since 1999, actually since I was born, which is a bit before 1999. I'm actually born in the watch industry, physically, as we can say. I was born in a city called Grenchen, which is well, I wouldn't say magnificent, but let's say it's one of the centers of watchmaking, is where ETA has his production, one of his main production sites. Breitling originally was there, still producing there. And many other watch brands. So I'm born in a family of watchmakers. My grandfather, my mother has been in the watchmaking, and I desperately tried as a teenager to run away from watchmaking and doing something else, which, as you can see, I didn't really manage properly. So I'm still back in this industry. I started. I would say I'm a bit. I have a bit unusual dual education. On one side, as I didn't do what I wanted to do, watches, but something creative. I always was attracted by creative industries. I started as an automobile designer, automotive design, art center. But as you know, aside of collecting helmets like you do. There's not much automotive industry in Switzerland, so there wasn't that much choice. And I did on the other side of let's say a bit more drier, down to earth economic studies, master's degree in economics. And well, I started in 96, I think. I did a few traineeships in watch design. Actually, I used to work in Swatch in the design lab with the famous Alessandro Mendini in the 90s. And then when I started looking for a job after university, well, it wasn't the best year. It wasn't easy years. And I desperately tried to find something where I could combine on one side my creative mind and my pretty down-to-earth economical mind. So the only job that actually fitted somehow my logic was doing flows, BPR, as we say, business process reengineering, and drawing flows in order to optimize companies. So I worked a few years in business process reengineering and consulting, which somehow is interesting because I end up doing the same today in another way. And then I worked 2 years in FMCG, which is quite interesting in years with a lot of marketing budgets, which is something I don't really use anymore nowadays. But back then, I had plenty of millions of dollars to promote FMCG, which was a fun period. And I joined watchmaking back in 1999, let's say end of 99, early 2000s.
Okay, great. Do you remember your first watch?
Oh, I very well do, yes. I don't exactly remember if I was 8 or 9. I guess I was 9, and it was Christmas. And my grandfather was very close to, he was in supply, and he worked with Swatch Group, which was then back then not Swatch Group, but basically worked with ETA and SMH back then. And he brought the Swatch, one of the very first Swatch watches for Christmas. And I would say probably my first watch was a Swatch, and probably one of the first, I don't know, maybe 2000, 1000 or production. And, you know, Swatch somehow is quite interesting. So this has been my first watch, but this Swatch watch and Swatch in general has been a fundamental part of what I am today, of how I think today, and how my career went over the years.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about your brand. Who was Luis Erard first? And can you tell us something about the origins of the history of the brand?
Well, as you mentioned in the intro, I mean, the band was founded in 1929, which we all know wasn't the greatest year of of economical situation. It was a major year of crisis. And I think this is very interesting. Something actually that I found very attractive when I started is being able to found a company in a year where everything went the other way, when it was, if not the biggest economical crisis ever. And Louis was a very versatile personality, somebody obviously very rooted in the watchmaking industry, started in La Chaux-de-Fonds, even though the company today is in Le Noirmont, historically in La Chaux-de-Fonds, which back in these years was a center, one of the, I think even before the crisis, one of the richest cities in Europe. Not today, but definitely back then. It was always an industrial city, and he worked in obviously this environment of watchmaking, creating components, movements for different companies, cases encased, worked with some of the major companies that you know today as a supplier, but also very quickly concentrated on basically offering needs of companies. And this is how he developed this whole identity, or let's say this whole know-how in regulators. As you know, the regulator is one of our key, if not our key, complication.
Mhm.
And how did this happen? Well, it happened the fact that working for others, he noticed that they had needs in the watchmaking ateliers to set the time before delivering the watches. And obviously back then, the second wasn't really important. I mean, today maybe it's more, but back in these years, it was not all about the second. It was very important, obviously, to have the hour minute set right. And everybody knew which hour it was, more or less. Everybody knows it's 10 or 11, 12. So the important was the minute. And this is how this regulator movement basically came alive. It existed before, but he really made it in a, let's say, more industrial logic by creating all these clocks for all these watchmaking ateliers to set the time. And over the years, this company has been around all the time, and worked for different companies before. I think it's just more or less 2003, where they decided to concentrate purely on the brand itself and not to continue working for different companies, and really try to promote or push this idea of a brand selling watches to consumers rather than working for others. They always did some products and projects for others, and even clients, and existed as a brand, but not to the extent. But it was a multi device, or multi. It was like a Swiss Army knife, if you like.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then what happened to the brand between 1992 and 2003?
Well, it belonged to another company,
Mm-hmm.
which basically had two, three other brands, and then they sold it back in 2003 to a few investors, which are still involved in the company. Still, the part of the investors are still the ones who basically bought it out from this conglomerate of different brands into making it alive by itself.
Mm-hmm. You have revived the brand when you joined the company, and how did you achieve it? You have changed everything from inside, and then now it's much more appreciated by the collectors and aficionados.
Well, I think it's yes and no. I mean, obviously, I had to change everything because it was the only way to continue. But I kept something fundamental. For me, the most fundamental element within Louis wasn't the collection, wasn't design, or wasn't markets, or wasn't retailers. It was a pure philosophy thing. So I concentrated everything around a few pillars, philosophies, if you like. One of them being that Luya started in 2003, very successfully, by the way, as the watch or the Swiss mechanical watch with the best value proposition, the most affordable price, if you like. And they were very, very successful because there was a market for people wanting mechanical watches, but not wanting to pay several thousands or 10,000s of Swiss francs. And Luya managed to really get into this position of offering as an incredible value proposition, incredible prices. And this is something I found very attractive. I thought this idea of price value proposition was fundamental. The problem back then was, and this is a reason why Luya had moved into a more difficult period, is, well, the price is not protectable, and very quickly, bigger companies in terms of size or in terms of organization or part of big groups understood that there was this little challenger from Lenoirmont who actually took a lot of market share in a very short period of time. And they obviously did what everybody else would do. They started to do their own very affordable mechanical watches. And when you're a brand of a big group like Swatch Group, for instance, you obviously have a verticality. Or if you're a brand which does several hundred thousands or millions of watches, well, you have a buying power, which both Louis did not have. And very quickly, the competition started. And this is what put Louis to a certain extent in a very difficult position. And instead of very quickly reacting by changing philosophies, they tried to compete. And this is what brought them to the edge of where I basically came into the play. So there was this idea of value proposition that was a very fundamental idea. There was a philosophy product-wise with the regulator, which has always been part of the brand. There's been a local attachment, regional attachment with this Noirmont that we're going to highlight in the next few months to come. And then there was something very, very interesting for me. There was a team. There was an incredible team of people who had gone through hell, if I can say so, which have been all very loyal. I mean, the average age in the company is I think 12 or 13 years, which is pretty much, we have even people which were part of Louis before 2003. So there was an extreme loyalty to the company, a lot of know-how, a lot of expertise, but also one thing that I like, a capacity to resilience, if you like, very, very strong resilience, because obviously it was very hard times from 2011, 12, when the competition with the price started to be too strong on Louis until we changed and turned around the company. They suffer. So I rebuilt the whole company around these philosophies. Philosophy of price, meaning that from just the movement, I went into everything that is related to high-end watchmaking. Just not offering the most affordable mechanical watch, but to offer the best value proposition for all the philosophies, elements, know-how, craftsmanship, people that makes high-end watchmaking. That was one thing. The other is to concentrate all around this idea of the regulator, to root it even more in the regional, local kind of tissue, if you like, or network. A simple thing, I'm not a big fan of this, but we redid the logo, and the logo is actually the crest of the Jura. So everything was thought to, the hands are in the shape of fir trees. We have this fir tree design, and obviously Noirmont, not much to see except a few watchmakers and fir trees and maybe a bit of blue skies and a few cows, but that's pretty much it. But anyway, we rooted it. And then the philosophy was to work with the resilient team and to basically bring up the team at let's say, decision level. So one of the first things I did is I cut all hierarchy. There's no more hierarchy. There's no more. Everybody became self-empowered. And we created a kind of management team where it was good for me because I like to be pretty free in the way I work. But so we don't have any how do you say this? We don't have anybody who reports to anybody. They all work together in one team. I'm trying like a little bit like in an orchestra. I'm trying to give the tact, the direction, and the music, but they work together very, very well. And I trust, and there's 100% trust. And I think these four pillars, if you like, have been the key of the turnaround.
Mm-hmm. It should be quite difficult, no, in those last years with increases on prices in all the main brands, then to maintain this value proposition, quality price, it should be quite difficult, and it's very interesting for collectors and watch lovers. And another question that it's I have heard you several times: what is the napkin strategy?
Okay, let's start with the price. Yes, indeed, difficult, but one of the first things for me has to be, when I started, there was maybe 300, 400 point of sales. And I said, one of the fundamental elements is we have to be self-sustainable. We have to be independent, not just because it's a cool buzzword nowadays to be independent. Independent watchmaking, everybody talks about, but to be really independent. And you have different logics of independence. You have a logic of independence when you move up the value chain, producing your own movements, producing your own components, which we're obviously not ready. That's something that we are now starting to do, but it was too early. We didn't have the funds to. And the other is to be independent in if you go down in the value chain. And that's obviously in terms of distribution and sales. And one of the first things I said, this company will be self-sustainable by selling its watches directly to customers. And this is one of the elements that today is one of the major strengths of Louyard, is we generate pretty much 50% of our revenues directly. 1/3 of our volumes, because obviously there's a margin involved in distribution, we sell ourselves. And these 1/3 of a volume, which is about 1,200, 300 watches a year, is enough to finance ourselves. It pays all the organization, it pays all the salaries, all the developments. So this creates fundamental independence, which is important to me. And then the remaining 2/3 of the production, we decided to only work with a very, very selective network that caters to collectors, to real watch collectors. And today we're very happy with our 68 retailers in the world. We don't have more. Maybe one day 80 is the maximum, but we only have the best of the best in every country. Not in all the countries. Spain is one of the white dots on our worldwide map yet, but we're not in a hurry. But we are working with the Hourglasses, the Sidikis, the Chrono Passion, the Watches of Switzerland, the Cellinis of this world, and this gives a lot of credibility. And then you would say, okay, 1,200, 1/3, so that's about 1,000, 3,600 watches a year, and it's actually right. We produce, as I like to say, 10 watches a day, every day of the year, which is obviously not the case because we're just moving into summer vacation now, but we do 3,600 watches more or less, so 10 watches a day. That's our production. So this comes into this kind of, as you said, to get back to your initial question, the price. By having this set up, by generating 50% online, well, I don't need the same margins. Okay? So I can actually have prices which are lower, or let's say markups which are lower, because I don't need to finance the whole value chain. And I'm a big believer of, it's not about the price or the markup, it's about the perceived value. And yes, we have some products where we lose money. One very interesting one is the wood marquetry. The dial itself costs half of the watch on the retail. So you can imagine if you do a bit of math that we cannot make any money on this watch, we actually lose money. but that's okay for me, because these métiers d'art, specifically the métiers d'art, the full fire enamel, the guilloché, métiers d'art have always been very, very important to me. Also because I'm rooted in this industry. Also because these craftsmen, these people are fundamental part of what watchmaking is. Often they're not visible, and often they actually struggle to exist because they're not, they're just, most watch brands, they work with these major craftsmen to put an added value on already a very existing price. So it's almost inaccessible. And I think it's a wrong approach. So all this to say, yes, our prices are very good because we don't need the same margins, and because also sometimes we're just very willing to say it doesn't matter whether we make profit or not. It matters what we can propose, what we can offer. And for us, sometimes instead of investing money in a testimonial or big marketing campaigns, well, we invest into the product. We invest into the retail price. We invest the money in, instead of making a big party in Ibiza. Well, we rather lose some money on some of the watches. So that's our marketing strategy, if you like. And then again, strategy, which is obviously what I do. That's, I would say, my main logic today. And as I mentioned before, I have this dual logic of economics and design, industrial design. So my napkin theory is actually both together, is the capacity to draw a strategy on a piece of paper, or in this particular case on a napkin, that makes sense. And I always said, and I always say to myself, if I cannot draw a strategy with a pen, and it doesn't hold on a napkin, and I'm not talking like a big napkin, but a small napkin, then it doesn't make sense, and then I don't do it. So this is what I call napkin strategy, is the capacity to visualize on a piece of paper in a very simple, very straightforward, very understandable way where we go and why we go there and how we go there often as well.
Do you produce your own calibers? Are you thinking about producing in the future? What is your strategy?
Yes, I'd love to. I mean, obviously, that, as I mentioned before, independence is in all fields. We concentrated on where we could act immediately, where we had, I would say, the capacity, the financial and the organizational capacity to do so. But independence in terms of supply, call it, is important. I know everybody talks about calibers. For me, it's a more widespread logic. At the end of the day, if it's to make movements less good than what exists on the market to a higher price, yeah, we can debate it's maybe independent. But then I'd rather work on métier d'art or on some specific craft or know-how that is unique, that's special, that really, and that is a real added value. Having said this, we for the time being, we work in networks because we are not the capacity to finance a full-fledged in-house production. So we just launched I think in April, the Tourbillon with Alain Silberstein, another collaboration. And I guess it's one of the most affordable, definitely in distribution, the most affordable Swiss-made tourbillon on the market. And it's 100% Swiss-made because even we give you all transparency on the supplier, including the lot talked about Atocalpa today, which is a key supplier that everybody's scared ends up in the wrong hands in this bit competition around Vaucher and the Parmigiani. So let's see. Anyway, we're very transparent with whom we work with. And we found this very talented watchmaker, which, by the way, used to work for Celita as an industrial director before, Olivier Maury. And he had a very interesting approach. He basically has a bit of an approach of the car industry, saying that instead of producing the entire movement from scratch, and therefore with the work, with the development, with the specific tooling and so on, having a very high cost price, why not concentrate on what is the core of the caliber, in this particular case, the escapement, the tourbillon, and build around something with as much existing components as possible. And this is his strength. So, it's like a car company. They buy their gear train, wheels, dashboards, seats from different companies, and they work around the body and some of the key elements. And he did something very similar, which allowed us to have this Swiss-made tourbillon in less than 100 pieces, which is a very, very limited edition for less than, was it 15,000 Swiss francs, which I think is unbeatable. There's some other bigger companies who have very affordable tourbillons, but this much bigger volumes, and they don't have the same approach. And we obviously looking for different things. We want to extend this, but this logic is a long-term logic. And as I mentioned before, I'd rather do the right thing rather the things right, because sometimes doing things right is not the right thing. And as I mentioned before, why did we use Sellita? Okay, yeah, I know some people would say, oh, wow, fantastic design, incredible craftsmanship, very collectible. Well, it's a Sellita movement. Well, yes, it is, but what is the Sellita movement? It's the best, most reliable industrial movement on the market. It's a movement, our return rate today is less than, 0.4%, something like this, which makes us probably the lowest in the whole in the whole watch industry, or one of the lowest in the whole watch industry, and it's actually reliable, and that's the fundamental part for me. That's the most important part for me, to be capable to offer something extremely resilient, extremely strong, extremely reliable, with no return, with no problem, with not headache, because collectors like watches, but they don't like headaches with watches. And then offer something unique, special. But the solid base, and to be capable to have these price points, we needed something industrial. And we have a very good partnership with Sellita, and that for me is fundamental.
Okay, great. You have been known and specialized in regulators. Your strategy is to keep on being attached to this kind of watches?
Jein, as we say in German, which means yes and no. Funny, because the tourbillon is a regulator tourbillon, okay, and obviously the regulator is part, but it's as I said, it's a core strategy, and it's the base. But it's also something that we will build over time around it. Today we have regulator, 3-hand, 1-push chrono. When I designed the strategy, it was very simple. There's one product strategy. So a regulator has 2 off-centered dials. So the other one was to say, okay, one is off-centered for small second, and the other one is for 1-push chrono at 12 o'clock with a counter, which we did. But these are extendable things. So we build on this. Regulator will always remain a big part of it. And I think we established ourselves as a sort of regulator company. So regulator means to set the pace or set the time. So I would say we can also set the time on other complications than just the regulator. So yeah, all this to answer. We will see other things. We're not monomaniacs, but we like to be solid. We like to be rooted. We like to be true to ourselves, and then it's like a tree. Then we try to blossom with different things, but our roots will be the regulator.
Mm-hmm. Since you arrived at the brand, Louis Erard has stood out as a company with amazing collaboration with designers and other watch brands like Constantin Chaikin, Masséna Lab, Vianney Halter, Eric Juru, or what you have said, Alan Silverstein. What is the reason to carry out those collaboration, and what do you look for in this kind of collaboration?
It's a bit of a very basic saying, but we always say that collaborations is 1 + 1 = 3, which I think is a very visual. That's a kind of napkin thing, because that you can understand very easily. And it's actually true. I mean, collaborations are accelerators. They people bring ideas, concepts. They push you. They sometimes challenge you. They open sometimes new territories for you. So collaborations are, for me, they're multiple benefits out of it. Obviously, there's a very down to earth benefit in terms of success of the brand. We've seen this, sales, for sure. But also in terms of philosophy, design, thinking differently. These challenges, they bring you to the next level. So for me, these are a fundamental part. And so far, we did collaborations with people. And there are always people behind. There's always a Constantine, Vianney, Alain, William, Romaric, Eric, and kind of endless first names. And this is on the classical line that we call cold excellence. We're going to change the name into Noirmont because we want to root our company a bit deeper very soon. And we still have the sports line that we haven't developed that much, and that we will develop next year and in the next few years. And there we're going to work not with the people, but more with philosophies, icons, brands, because they also bring something different on the table. So this is a full-fledged strategy. It's not just about this. But then again, if you come to why, well, because we had, as I mentioned before, one of the pillars was to offer a value proposition of what is high-end watchmaking at affordable price point. So the value proposition was to be more philosophical. And obviously, these people are part of what high-end watchmaking is. Vianney, Alain, all these people, they're part of this whole ecosystem, and they make watchmaking, and they're a fundamental part of why people like watchmaking. And I'm sure you know this very well, Alfonso, and your auditors as well. Today, we talk a lot about independence, but actually we talk a lot about people. Okay, it's the Receps, the Maxes, the Felixes, and all the others that the carries that people, collectors, are drawn to. So humans are what makes watchmaking. I always say a good brand is 50% product and 50% people, and then this is wrapped up. And this is also maybe also a reason why today independent watchmaking is so powerful. Is a lot of collectors have understood that these people behind these brands, they're genuinely passionate. They genuinely love what they do. They live for their they live for watchmaking. I mean, and it's true. And when you talk with these people, most of them, including myself, we collect our watches. I collect watches. They collect watches because we love watches, and not just our watches, also the watches from other people. And I spend a big part of my day texting to other CEOs or owners to congratulate them whenever I think it's a good watch. Sometimes to get an allocation as well. Anyway, having said this, so it's a lot about the people, and this may be also a reason why corporate brands today are not so successful. Mm-hmm. Because often these people who run these companies, they run companies. They run spreadsheets, as I say. They're maybe not that passionate, not standing that strongly behind the brand, because they're working on careers, on stock options, on revenues, and I think this is a big difference. But then again, to come very down to earth, why Alain? Well, when I started with this strategy, for me made therefore sense because it was part of what is the philosophy of high-end watchmaking. So all this saying I just did is basically to say this is what I consider as watchmaking, why it is attractive, because of these people, because of this passion. And so this had to be part of my strategy. But Alain was a bit of an unexpected first move, because I did a collaboration with Alain at my Romain Jérôme times in I think 2011 or 12, which wasn't very successful because it didn't have the Silberstein codes. But I enjoyed doing it with him, but it wasn't that aware because it didn't have the usual triangle, square, round, blue, yellow, red elements that everybody knows Alain for, the Bauhaus or neo-Bauhaus style. And the reason is that when in 2019 in Basel, so I started, basically shareholders called me end of 2018 saying, look, we need somebody to assess if we should continue or close down the company, because the last few years have been very difficult and we lost money. We believe into the company, we believe into its potential, but we need a new vision. And are you willing to help us with the strategy? And so I did one of my napkins magic, so I pulled the strategy on a piece of paper, which they liked. And they said, wow, I think this could work. And collaboration has been part of it. And then they said, okay, so now who's going to do that? And I said, oh, no, not me. I'm not going to be CEO anymore. Been there, done that. Run Jacquero for 10 years, RJ for 6 years. I've done enough for working for others. I want to work for myself. And anyway, they said, but help us nevertheless. And this is where I come back to the team. When I said the team for me was very important because I couldn't have done this without the team. But anyway, cut the long story short. So the back then CEO says, come with me to Basel. You have to meet our biggest client to understand. I said, okay. The biggest client back then was Japan, the Japanese distributor. And I very, very quickly, maybe after 30 seconds, 1 minute, I understood that the only reason the Japanese came for the meeting was trying to put an end to the collaboration. Okay. But Japanese being Japanese, being very, very cautious, very respectful, very patient, very gentle. They obviously didn't come in American way, say, throwing everything overboard and moving out. They just, they still looked at the collection with not a lot of conviction, because they're still the same collection back then. But trying to find the right moment to pull the trigger. And I felt this, and I was like, so we get to the end of the presentation, and I see they're starting to, build up, trying to say it, and said, yes, but one more thing. I learned a bit from Steve Jobs, one more thing. And they said, well, one more thing. I said, yeah, but we're going to soon have a collaboration that's going to be killer in Japan. And they said, okay, with whom? I said, okay, well, I can't really talk. I didn't have any clue, to be honest. So I was like, okay, well, it's a bit early. I can't really tell you. And then they said, yeah, but if you don't tell us, we need to know. I said, okay. Now it just came natural. So Alain Silverstein, because I knew Alain is this kind of semi-god in Japan. And they said, wow, it changed the whole ball game. They were all excited. Wanted to be sure, though, that the whole collaboration becomes before their fiscal year, which is end of March, which is basically 11 months, 10, 11 months after. So timing was pretty short. And so they were happy. They didn't say it. I said, oh, very much. We were actually coming to put an end to the relation. I was like, okay, patient saved.
One more chance.
Reanimate.
One more chance.
Well, now we have to recover, but I didn't have anything. So within like the moment they left, I took my phone, I called Alain, and I said, yeah, you Alain? I said, oh, I'm okay. A bit bored. Not much happening. I said, yeah, you want to have a new challenge? And he said, yeah, sure. You want to do another collaboration? And he said, yeah, I'm all in. Great. And then he said, but with whom? And I said, well, Louis. I said, no, I don't know Louis. I said, Allah, how come, you're really too long out of the business? It's like, this is like the brand you need to collaborate with. And he said, okay, whatever. I trust you. Let's go. And so that's why I started with Alain. And obviously Alain is being a creative mind. We did quite a few collaborations with him over the years, very successfully, with GPHG nomination and so on. But unlike Constantine, Vianney, they don't have their own brand. He doesn't have his own brand anymore. Maybe one day he will revive it, but he doesn't have it anymore. So for him, creating is the way for him to exist. So I understood very quickly that if I don't keep him continuing creating, he's going to create for somebody else, because obviously this was such a successful nobody expected it. It was, I think it was one of the big hits, probably one of the biggest hits back then. And obviously it created a lot of interest into doing collaborations with Alain. Although the first, and you always have to give back to the king, was Max. He was the first to collaborate with Alain, but somehow this collaboration with Louis changed a lot in all this collaborative logic, a bit too much, because now you see all sorts of collaborations that don't fit. And I'm a big believer that a collaboration is about people.
Yeah.
It's about friendship. It's not just about business. And I would never do a collaboration if it's not somebody I know, not somebody I appreciate, not somebody I even would have a dinner or hang out or even go on a vacation with. So I choose my collaborations based on people, based on who they are, not on what they do. This is also a reason why the latest collaboration has been with Cedric Joner. Not a lot of people know Cedric. Actually, I don't think there's many. Because he only makes his 18, 20 watches a year, because everything is handmade, including he's the only one to file his own cases. But I know him for 25 years, and we've been together since the early years. We traveled together, and he's been one of the first independent watchmakers, as Alain was even earlier. But he also had different a life is a cycle. A life are waves. He had different ups and downs, and today he's just by himself in his own atelier doing his stuff the way he likes it. And for me, this is a reason why I did it with him, because I can do it with the people I like. It's more interesting for me, Cedric Joner, than I would not name them because I don't get create any frustrations, but much more known watchmakers, because it's all about the people.
Mhm. Geneva watch days are coming. Any novelties, any new collaboration for the future? Can you tell us a little hint or clue about what is coming?
Lots of things are coming, that's for sure. I mean, my pipeline, I'm a creative person. So if I can't create products or do things, I'm probably I would be nervous and make people nervous. So they're all happy that I, run after some collaborations. Today, my pipeline is over 40 projects. So I'm good to go. If it's up to me, I'm good to go for 2 years. It's up to my team. It's more like 5 years or 6 years because it's too much. But the idea is really to launch a product or create something every 6 to 8 weeks. I'm rather for 4 weeks. They're rather for 8 weeks. So probably we trade off at 6, but not in summer because everybody wants to be in a vacation, and not on Christmas because everybody wants to take care of the family. So fair deal. So if you calculate, that makes about 7 or 8 a year. And within this, we try to not do it in collaborations, and specifically not watchmaking collaborations. So there's going to be two. Actually, it's going to be this year is 4 because there's Alain, actually twice Alain, then Cedric, then the big collaboration at Geneva Watch Dates that we will present is with Stefan Kudoke. Also somebody, him and his wife, Eve. I used to work with Eve for some company I consulted for. I love these this couple. It was a very interesting couple. So that's going to be the next big thing in September. We have others coming, obviously. We try to do an artistic contemporary art collaboration every January. We had Olivier Mosset, which is one of the most established contemporary artists, Swiss friend, but very, very established. I would urge your auditors to go and have a look at the Pinot collection. Pinot, obviously, François Pinot is the biggest, if not one of the biggest, if not the biggest collector of contemporary art, with his museums in Paris and Venice. And he's one of the most established collections, and he has a few pieces in the collection of Olivier Mosset. I'm just giving a hint. Do Olivier Mosset for Pinot Foundation, and it's going to be very interesting to see how you transform that into a watch. But anyway, that's my passion aside of watches, contemporary art. And then I try, and this is a bit more challenging sometimes, with architects and designers. There's been Eric Giroux Atelier, which are friends. I was their first trainee, was their first employee when they started. The same small village that I come from, or close to it, and we stayed friends for years and years. Although everybody knows them in the watch industry because they make all the boutiques for all the watch brands. some of the factories, but also work a lot with Hermes and LV for furniture, very established. But the name Atelier, outside of design and architecture world, not a lot of people know them. It's a bit more complex with architects because they take time, the Calatravas and Chipperfields of this world, it takes a bit of time, but I'm working on that. So we try to work with one person out of the community, Masena, Profile, second, architects and designers, Eric, Atelier, others, and watchmakers, Konstantin Vianney and so on, and contemporary artists. We try to have one or two per year. And aside of this, we want to have at least one métier d'art a year. So we did Émail Grand Feu, Faux Fire Enamel with Donzé. That's also quite challenging. We just launched the regulator. Coming back to we didn't have the regulator before. Why? Because making a hole into a dial, enamel dial, costs a lot of money. So 2 hands and a second costs already quite a lot. But if you add the hole for the hour, guess how much costs a hole in a Donzé Faux Fire enamel dial? Just a hole. Try to give a number.
No idea.
I challenge you, Alfonso. It's about 300 Swiss francs. Just a hole, huh? Okay, so we couldn't do the regulator before because we couldn't afford the hole before. So anyway, cut the long story short, so one métier d'art, whether it's Faux Fire enamel, guillochement, wood marquetry. I'd love to do flanqué, paillonné, chanlevé, cloisonné, because I think not everybody can afford an Anita Porsche signed enamel dial, but there's a lot of craftsmen, interesting people, which maybe are not as visible as Anita or others, but they're also as talented, and we can give them a platform, and we can give. Basically, it's like a dating site for collectors and artisans. They can date on the Louis Erard dating site, so they can get an artisan for an affordable price for collectors. Anyway, just a little joke, but it's important for me. So we balance between these collaborations, métier d'art, and obviously here and there a product that's non-limited in the quantities. Because today pretty much everything is limited, so we're also trying to have a little bit less limited products, because we also see we create a lot of frustration sometimes, because some of our watches sell in a few minutes, and not everybody can get their hand on, and we're trying step by step there also to create an offer that is not it's not sold in 3 minutes, just a few collectors.
Mm-hmm. Manuel, I think that you have told me that you are even planning to change the names of your collection. What's your strategy for the future, for the next 5 to 10 years?
Lots of things. I mean, the name, the branding, the logo, these are things. I mean, I wouldn't even say these are important. Well, the only reason why we changed the logo back in the years was also to make a distinction in the collections, to make people understand that this is the new Louis Erard versus the old, because there was a lot of old products on the market, and to cut. So it was more a question of creating a disruption rather than to create a new logo. But we also wanted to change the collections, because for me they were just too generic, too like excellence for classical. I found this a bit sportive for sports. Yeah, makes sense, but somehow it doesn't. There's no emotion involved, and I think emotions are very important. So these are small details, but we definitely want to build, as I said to you before. On one side, if we take the product, there's a whole sports line that we want to redevelop with partnerships to activate and animate. We want to venture into calibers. We want to try different things. We want to work on different price points, because we are not selling a price. We're selling a value proposition. Today, I cannot do any watches below 2,000 Swiss francs. Why? Simply because we decided that 80% of what we do has to be Swiss made in the value of the product. which is much more than what the regulations of Swissness at 60% actually, have. But that also means that I cannot do what I do. I just cannot do it below 2000. It's just impossible. Not with the volumes that we have. And so this is where we start, because we want to do only mechanical. At least that's my idea today. But then we want to go into all the ventures of craftsmanship, as I mentioned before, but also calibers. We started with the King, the tourbillon. Maybe you want to have the Queen, the minute repeater, or something related to this. There's so many interesting things in this world of calibers and movements. It will take a lot of time. It's a very long strategy, but that's one strategy. So you see, we have a horizontal strategy in the product and a vertical strategy in the product, and that's where I have the Swiss cross. Looks like a Swiss cross. We have the Swiss cross is very important in the way of designing the strategy. We have two collections, classical, sports, and then we have two ways of animating, collaborations and partnerships. So that's another Swiss cross. You see, it's all about, you can visualize. So this is in terms of products, know-how. I want to keep a small team. Not to name Elon Musk, but we all know that the bigger the teams are, the more dilution there is, the more people do things which are useless, or it just creates and means for me more work. And I have decided in my life that I will not spend more than 10% of my time on organizational, administrative, or managing operational stuff, which is unique, because in general that's the opposite. You do 10% creative, 5% strategy, and the rest is daily operations. And I refuse this for myself. So I don't want to have a big team, because smaller teams more efficient, more independent. No hierarchy, very important for me. They self-balance each other, and it's very good because they all work on one chain of value, and they auto-regulate. Here again comes the regulator. They regulate each other within the organization. So this is not my idea, but then on the other hand, I have a bit of a interesting. We're already very strong in the distribution, because 50% of our business is direct to consumer, and 50% is retail. I don't want to get bigger with the number of retailers. Maybe, as I mentioned, Spain is missing on the map. Portugal is missing on the map. There's a few markets, not many. Maybe there's 10 markets missing. These I obviously would like to open. But I always say that I don't want to have more than one or two, maybe three, depending per country, because for me the important is to have a presence. For me, the point of sale is actually not a point of sale, but a point of marketing, POM, not POS, touch point, where the collector, the client, can go with his watch, whether he bought it online or in the store, get the service, if there's a problem, he has a touch point. It's also a very good way of building image and credibility. But there's a logic between selling and distributing, and I don't want to distribute, I just want to sell. For this, I would say the ideal size maybe today is 80, 100 point of sales over the years, but we're going to go very slowly, because we're not in a hurry. We don't need to be in a hurry. Business is very good. I can say without blushing that we actually growing this year, which is probably one of the few exceptions in the industry. So we're still on a very good momentum. So I'm not in a hurry. Company is healthy, it's profitable, independent, as I said. So I have no rush. And then a little, personal interest is to create value on the whole chain of value. So caliber-wise, or let's say production supply-wise, but also distribution-wise, not just in virtual distribution, but also in physical distribution. And one of the elements I work on now is owned retail, own shops. And I don't want to open 100 stores in the world. I don't care about this. but I want to create some interesting spaces. I'm a bit bored of these watch stores, to be honest, especially on the monobrand stores. They all look the same. They all have the same kind of, you even have the logo on the sugar or of the coffee cup. I mean, yes, great, but how has been for me. I think today in terms of retail, there's so much interesting things to be done, also for the watches. It doesn't need to be a house or an apartment or whatever is trendy right now. It can be something in between. It can be something different. And this is something I would like to build on in the next 2, 3 years. I would like to have a touch point in the Middle East, a touch point in Asia, a touch point in the Americas, and touch point in Europe. 3 to 5 retail stores in the world. So that's my strategy for the next 10 years.
Okay, great. Let's talk. Oh, you have been talking a little bit about your prices. What is the price range of your watches for our viewers?
So we start at 2,000 Swiss francs, which I think is a bit of a unified prices. I did this once for one of the brands I took care of. So 2,000 Swiss francs, euros, dollars are pretty much the same nowadays. And the core is between 2,000 and let's say 4,500. So this is where pretty much everything stays today. And then we start again with, because we do watches in sets, which is very unusual. I think I understood that it's easier to put 3 or 4 watches in one box rather than to sell one watch, especially because we have a lot of collectors. Okay. So our price point is so accessible that people buy them in sets. Okay. So we have a few sets. Most expensive set today is about 25,000 euros. But as a single watch, the most expensive today, or let's say the highest price tag, because still very affordable for what it is our tourbillon at 15,000. So we go 2 to 5, let's say. Then we have some sets all over the price between 5 and 25. And then we have the tourbillon at 15.
Great, great. Then my last question, thank you for being with us, is a question that I do to all my interviewees, is if you were not wearing a Louis Erard, which brand and what model would you wear?
That's difficult to say. I'm a collector. I actually buy a lot of watches. I like watches, and I think I can only do what I do because I like what I do. So I buy watches. I can't wear them all the time. I sometimes do, which surprises people when I rock up with another watch. I obviously wear a lot Colloquium because this is my other venture now with my 2 friends, Amer and Bart, which is a really, really cool product and has been very, very successful. So I wear a lot my Colloquium. I tend to wear a lot my first Jacques the Grand Second, which was the base. I have the luck to own the Épreuve d'Artiste because I didn't want to do a prototype or something. It was so boring. So the very first Grand Second, which basically I created and has been the fundaments of the whole rebirth of Jacques it's the Grand Second with a full fire enamel dial. And it's written EP, Épreuve d'Artiste 1 out of 3, because it was with the 2 other people that we did this. This I wear quite often because this for me is my grail watch, if you like. It's the watch that has put the foot in the door for me in the watchmaking. 10 years of my life, built this company, Jacques from, what was it, 200,000 Swiss francs, euros, dollars, at the very first year in 2001 to 40 million when I left. I wear this quite a lot. I wear quite often my Roman Jerome Super Mario watch because collaborations, I think with RJ, I somehow became the king of collaborations back in the years, Batman's Super Mario, Pokemon. Back then in 2000, today to sell a tourbillon with a Spider-Man or Black Panther 200,000, nobody really shocked. I mean, you might be shocked, but not really surprised. But selling a Pokemon RJ tourbillon at 200,000 in 2012 was a bit of a provocation, that's for sure. So I wear my Pokemon sometimes as well, Super Mario and Pokemon, and then Let me think. The latest acquisitions is the Barents last week. To be honest, 20 grams.
Amazing
Impressive,
watch, yeah.
amazing value proposition there as well. Lots of know-how. Very interesting company. And then I bought a Christopher Ward Bel Canto. I bought
Another
one
one
of
in my watch list.
one of Max's watch, Mad Edition. Laurent Ferrier recently. What else did I buy? Let me think. I need to think. A Chaikin Minions, which I was lucky enough to get an allocation of. So you see, I mean, look, I do what I like, and what I like is successful, and with the success, I buy what I'm passionate with, which is basically watches and art. So.
We are going to know more about Colloquium because we have interviewed Barth some days ago, and then our viewers will know more about the brand. Manuel, thank you so much for being with us. I hope that we will see you soon back in Spain. Maybe a brand shop or collaborating
who knows?
with other
One
retailers.
Of the retailers.
Yeah.
Well, we had some discussions in Spain, but Spain takes a bit of time.
Yeah.
We have time. When you both have time, it takes time. Okay. But anyway, cut the long story short, I mean, it's Spain. You know my name. Manuel is very Spanish.
Yeah, sure.
I spent all my youth. We had a house in Segur de Calafell. So Spain is close to my heart. I have a bit of Spanish blood inside of me.
Sure, I have a lot of Manuels in my family.
I'm sure. It's pretty common. Anyway, Alfonso, it was a real pleasure to talk to you. And yeah, let's see soon in Spain or anywhere else in this world. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.